Tsukuyomi, the moon god in Japanese Shinto mythology, is a figure often associated with the mystery of the night, the unconscious, and the emotional and intuitive aspects of the human experience. As the sibling of Amaterasu, the sun goddess, and Susanoo, the storm god, Tsukuyomi's role in the mythological pantheon stands in contrast to his celestial counterparts. Whereas Amaterasu embodies the conscious, rational, and life-giving forces, and Susanoo represents the stormy, chaotic energies of transformation, Tsukuyomi occupies the realm of introspection, calmness, and darkness. His story, while less known than that of Amaterasu or Susanoo, carries profound psychological symbolism, particularly when interpreted through a Jungian lens. That Tsukuyomi's role as the god of the moon links him directly to the archetypes of the unconscious. The moon, in Jungian psychology, is a powerful symbol of the unconscious mind, the realm of intuition, dreams, and the deeper, hidden aspects of the self. Unlike the sun, which represents the light of consciousness and the rational ego, the moon symbolizes the shadow, the repressed or hidden parts of the psyche that often operate outside of conscious awareness. Tsukuyomi, as the personification of the moon, represents the pull of the unconscious and the integration of those dark, unseen forces into the broader fabric of the psyche. The moon's light, which reflects the sun's energy but is often obscured by clouds or its phases, symbolizes the partial and indirect nature of unconscious insight. Tsukuyomi thus embodies the emotional and intuitive knowledge that arises from the depths of the unconscious, though it is often elusive, fluctuating, and harder to directly perceive or grasp. The most significant myth associated with Tsukuyomi revolves around his violent interaction with his sister, Amaterasu, which leads to his exile from the heavenly realm. In the myth, Tsukuyomi, angered by the actions of the food goddess Yukimachi, slays her, an act which shocks Amaterasu. This act of violence causes a rift between the siblings, and Amaterasu, in disgust, banishes Tsukuyomi to the night sky. The emotional and psychological tension in this story reflects the struggle between the conscious mind and the unconscious, between the ego and the deeper, instinctual forces that reside within us. Tsukuyomi's action of slaying Yukimachi, the goddess of food and sustenance, can be seen as an impulsive, unconscious act driven by the darker, repressed emotions that emerge from the depths of the psyche. In Jungian terms, this represents the eruption of the shadow, those primal, unconscious aspects of the self that, when not integrated or acknowledged, can manifest in destructive ways. This act of violence against Yukimachi and the subsequent exile of Tsukuyomi speaks to the complex relationship between the ego and the shadow. Tsukuyomi's actions reflect the impulsive, often destructive energy of the unconscious when it is not acknowledged, and its potential for harm when it operates unchecked. Amaterasu's reaction to banish Tsukuyomi represents the ego's tendency to reject or suppress those parts of the self that are too difficult to integrate, those emotions, impulses, and instincts that are seen as other or unacceptable. The myth thus explores the tension between light and dark, between conscious order and unconscious chaos. Tsukuyomi's exile to the night sky can be interpreted as the ego's rejection of the darker, hidden aspects of the self, pushing them into the unconscious where they can no longer directly influence the conscious mind but still operate in subtle, unseen ways. Tsukuyomi's exile also symbolizes the psychological process of repression. In Jungian terms, repression occurs when parts of the self, often aspects of the unconscious that are deemed too painful, unacceptable, or chaotic, are pushed out of conscious awareness. The unconscious mind, however, does not simply disappear. It continues to exert influence in ways that may not be immediately evident, such as through dreams, projections, or unconscious impulses. Tsukuyomi's place in the night sky, separate from the world of the living, reflects how these repressed aspects of the self can become distant or disowned, but still hold sway over the individual's psyche. While the moon is a symbol of the unconscious and intuition, Tsukuyomi's separation from the sun goddess Amaterasu highlights the need for balance and integration. The ego must confront and integrate the unconscious, not suppress or exile it, in order to achieve a more holistic self. Despite his exile, Tsukuyomi's role as the moon god remains essential to the cosmic balance. In Jungian psychology, the integration of the unconscious is a crucial part of the individuation process, the process by which the individual integrates the unconscious with the conscious self in order to achieve wholeness. The moon's cyclical nature, waxing and waning as it reflects the changing phases of the sun, symbolizes the ebb and flow of unconscious and conscious energies within the psyche. Tsukuyomi's presence in the night sky, though separated from the sun, plays a vital role in balancing the forces of light and dark. The moon does not oppose the sun, but complements it. Without the moon, the sun's light would have no contrast, and the psyche would be incomplete. Tsukuyomi, as the god of the moon, represents the aspect of the self that must be embraced, integrated, and acknowledged for personal growth and transformation. Tsukuyomi's relationship with Amaterasu also highlights the dynamics between the masculine and feminine aspects within the psyche. While Amaterasu represents the solar, conscious, and rational aspects of the ego, Tsukuyomi represents the lunar, unconscious, and emotional forces that are often more instinctual and intuitive. The conflict between the two gods illustrates the tension between these forces: reason versus emotion, light versus darkness, consciousness versus unconsciousness. However, both are necessary for the harmonious functioning of the self. The integration of these opposites, the reconciliation between the masculine and feminine, light and dark, rational and emotional, is a central theme in Jungian psychology. Tsukuyomi's myth suggests that true wholeness comes from the acceptance and integration of both the conscious and unconscious forces within the self. Furthermore, Tsukuyomi's association with the moon ties him to the cyclical nature of life and consciousness. The moon's phases reflect the natural ebb and flow of the unconscious. Just as the moon waxes and wanes, so too do the unconscious aspects of the psyche fluctuate between awareness and obscurity. Tsukuyomi, as the embodiment of the moon, symbolizes the rhythmic nature of psychological life. The unconscious is not a static, unchanging force. It shifts, changes, and evolves over time. Just as the moon provides light in the darkness, so too does the unconscious provide insight, intuition, and emotional wisdom, though often in an indirect or hidden manner. In conclusion, the myth of Tsukuyomi, when interpreted through a Jungian lens, speaks to the dynamic relationship between the conscious and unconscious, the masculine and feminine, and the light and dark aspects of the psyche. Tsukuyomi, the moon god, represents the unconscious mind, the emotional, intuitive, and instinctual forces that must be integrated into the conscious self in order for the individual to achieve wholeness. His exile from the heavenly realm symbolizes the repression and rejection of the unconscious, while his ongoing role as the moon reflects the need for balance, acceptance, and integration of both the conscious and unconscious forces within the self. Tsukuyomi's myth teaches that the unconscious is an essential part of the psyche that must not be ignored or repressed, but embraced and understood. Only through the integration of these opposing forces can the individual achieve true psychological wholeness.